collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
On this week's programme, as Cyprus is downgraded from Tier 1 to Tier 2 on the Trafficking in Persons report, we hear how the authorities are failing to offer proper support to victims.
Victims' rights are not easily granted to them as provided by law, and their granting depends on the goodwill or mood, the good mood, I would say, of the officials and their knowledge of the subject.
A new tourist route aims to give hands-on experiences of the real Cyprus.
A 500-kilometer route of authentic experiences, and by authentic experiences, I don't mean just going to see a church that nobody knew existed, but it's about meeting the local people, the handicrafts people, going to somebody's home, for example, and see how they make halloumi, taste it, getting the recipe, trying to make it for yourself.
And we get the lowdown on an upcoming theatre production.
The type of play that you're going to laugh, you're going to get emotional, something's going to hit home, you're going to relate to things, both men and women.
The 2021 State Department's Trafficking in Persons report recently downgraded Cyprus from Tier 1 to Tier 2. Now, that's mainly because there haven't been any trafficking convictions, despite several prosecutions over the last 3 or 4 years. The House of Representatives Committee on Human Rights discussed the issue last week. One of the members is DC Deputy Rita Superman, who is also a former head of the trafficking unit in the police. She joins us now. Rita, thanks very much indeed. You're probably the best person to talk to us about this because you've been heavily involved in the trafficking scene, as it were, when you were with the police. Can you give us an overview of how important Tier 1 and Tier 2 are in that trafficking report?
Of course, it is very important for a country to remain on Tier 1, because if you are on Tier 2, that means that the government does not fully meet the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking, although it is making efforts to do so. It's not so good for the image of a country to be on Tier 2, a European country, actually, because there have been a lot of instruments to support the authorities to remain on Tier 1. For example, there has been a very strong legislation, there has been a national action plan, a national referral mechanism, so you can realize that the tools are there. So what is not there is the right implementation, and this is not so good. It doesn't honor the country.
So do you think that the laws that we have in place at the moment are sufficient and it's just a question of making sure they are properly implemented?
Yes, for sure.
What would you say?
There are many laws which harmonizes the European directives or the Council of Europe, the Convention, or other international instruments. The Palermo Protocol, they are all there. And I think that the penalties provided by the Cypriot law maybe are of the most strict around Europe.
But they're not working, are they? So what is the problem with the implementation?
I would say there are several problems. The most important is the protection of the victims. The national referral mechanism does not work properly. That means that the victims are not supported to remain in the country until for the whole period that the trial is going on. So they are not reintegrated in our society in the way they should. It's not easy anyway. So victims' rights are not easily granted to them as provided by law. And their granting depends on the goodwill or mood, the good mood, I would say, of the officials and their knowledge of the subject.
Rita, can I just ask you this? We've heard many cases, actually, of trafficked persons who have ended up leaving the country before their case comes to trial. Nobody encourages them or supports them to stay so that a prosecution can be successful. Do we need to change the law and make it obligatory for the relevant government departments to ensure that trafficked people are properly supported right up until the end of a court case, when if they decide then to leave the country, they're free to do so?
I would say that there is such provision in the law, which says that the victims are supported before, during, and for a period after trial. So there is such provision on the law. The other thing is trials last for years, and so the victims choose to return. As I said, they are unable to reintegrate to the Cypriot society. And here I would add that individualized long-term programs for integration do not exist. This is the key issue, I think. So we need to treat the victims case by case, not put them all under the same programs and procedures. We need individualized programs for each one of them. So here is the role of the social welfare service, but also there is the role of the police and the role of the courts. So, as I said, trials last for years. I would like to underline some of Greta's concerns, the Council of Europe experts, about legal aid which has not been provided to the victims of trafficking. This is related to the access to the rights. No compensation has been granted so far. Also, there is a provision for setting up a victim fund which is delayed. No victim has received state compensation, and therefore Greta urged the authorities to facilitate and guarantee access to compensation from perpetrators.
Rita, it's a very long list, but surely we don't expect these people to pay their own way while they sit and wait for a trial to start, or indeed to pay for a lawyer, which, as you say, legal aid should be provided. And the other problem, I would think, is possibly that in a place the size of Cyprus, the person who might be prosecuted for the offence is probably very easily able to locate these people.
That is true, and that could be solved, I would say, by establishing cooperation with other countries towards this direction. And we could do that, the authorities could do that. I mean, to support the victims, maybe leaving the country and go to another country, or protect the victims, put them under the protection scheme of the government. But on the other hand, let's face one thing. The main issue for the victims is to have their freedom. When they are victims, they do not have their freedom. Have in mind this. So they are not willing to enter into any protection scheme. But the country here is very small, as you said. So we can easily protect them. They can be in communication, a constant communication with the police authorities, or to a dedicated person, or to NGOs. So that is the way it works right now. And this is not the main problem, that they are afraid that they will be traced by the traffickers. It's one reason, yes, but I think that this obstacle can be overcome.
All right, and what about the fact that if they were allowed to go back to their home countries, we could pay for them to come back when the trial finally gets underway, which, as you and I both know, could be 6-7 years hence?
Yes, but this is doable, and the authorities try to do this. When I used to be the head of the anti-trafficking department, many times we try to do this, but have in mind, when they go home, when they leave the country, they don't want to come back. They don't want to face the situation again. They don't want to go to the court. They are afraid. They went home. They think they are free there. they don't come back.
Okay,
So
they've put the
yes.
nightmare behind them, I suppose, and that
Yes,
is understandable. So
Yes, they don't come back. So that's why we need to support our programs for reintegration, for them to be able to find a job, to be able to develop some skills, to get involved with our society, to be able to study, to go to the university or to a college. Those are the things we need to work.
And we haven't really got anything in place to do that at the moment, I think, have we?
No, it depends on individual, on the persons who are in the services. I mean, it depends on the goodwill of the officers or of the other employees of the government.
So it does seem that we need proper guidance for these people. Perhaps the new Deputy Ministry for Social Welfare will be able to improve matters. Can I ask you finally about the idea that in actual fact to make these laws bite more, the purchases of trafficked people's services should also be prosecuted. It's something that's been mooted many times over the years and always been slammed down here in Cyprus. Should we be prosecuting the people who make use of these services?
But there is such provision. For 2 years now, I think since 2019, there is a similar provision. So the buying of victim services is penalized by the law.
Has anybody been prosecuted?
No. That's the issue is that we don't have any prosecution, any custom prosecution for customers.
Can you explain that? Because we all know where all these places are. We see them every day.
I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned about this provision will be declared it's against the Constitution, something like that.
But you said it's been passed into law.
Yes, it has, but it has not been
Tested in court.
Yes, it has not been used yet. I think that there are some cases, pending cases, in where we have customers prosecuted, but they have not been tried yet. So we don't know what will happen with this provision. On the other hand, yes, it's not so easy to find the customers having in mind the methods of investigation. I would like to speak a little bit about the investigation. My personal feeling is that the investigation is actually the traditional, let's say, investigation which is used for the investigation of common crime cases. But the trafficking cases cannot be investigated with this kind of methods because it's organized crime. We need to develop our investigation, for example, in the country of origin or in transit countries, or we have to cooperate with other countries, European or not. So those cases are very difficult to be investigated. Trafficking is not committed as a crime alone. There are several crimes involved in a trafficking case. So you can imagine how big a trafficking case can be. On the other hand, the victims are not the perfect witnesses before the court. So we need to corroborate their testimonies. We need to use the testimony of a clinical psychologist to explain the situation of the victim, for example. I mentioned those things just to give you the idea how difficult it is to investigate the trafficking case. And nowadays, trafficking has been developed mostly on the internet. All the traffickers use the technology. It's not so easy to find either the customer or the trafficker. So what needs to be done is that the police officers and all the other stakeholders should be trained, should be specialized. We need specialization in all the fields. I mean, from the social workers, the police officers, the prosecutors, judges, all of them should be specialized to be able to to realize that a trafficking case, many times they cannot even identify a trafficking case, and it is prosecuted under lesser offenses. So it's not so easy to say that no customers have been prosecuted or no traffickers have been prosecuted. Sometimes, not sometimes, in most of the time, it's very difficult to find them.
All right, it does seem that we have an awful long way to go then if we need to pull our socks up, as it were. And possibly one of the things they've, I think, instituted new court procedures for certain types of things. Maybe we need a fast-track court for trafficking so that these people can get over their nightmare quicker and return to their home countries.
That would be ideal. And there is one word I would like to speak about: coordination. We need a coordination body which will evaluate everything and put everything under control in order to have impact on that awful crime.
It is indeed a terrible crime, and it's on the rise, I think. Rita Superman, former head of the police unit for combating human trafficking, now an MP in our Parliament who sits on the Human Rights Committee. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Tourist arrivals are increasing, and local people are also taking advantage of pandemic restrictions to explore the island. The Deputy Ministry of Tourism is inaugurating a new route offering hands-on experiences of the real Cyprus, as Deputy Minister Savas Perdios explains.
This is a very exciting project for us. We have been working on it for the last 18 months, if I'm honest. Actually, the idea sprang to mind in November 2019, just before the pandemic. After a trip to Ireland, they have a route on the west side of the country. It's called the Wild Atlantic Way. And it's a route which they implemented in order to get people out of the main parts of the country and into the more alternative side. And that gave us the idea that we could do something similar, focused exclusively on the rural and mountain areas of Cyprus. And the translation on that is Heartland of Legends. This is going to be a 500-kilometer route of authentic experiences. And by authentic experiences, I don't mean just going to see a church that nobody knew existed, but it's about, meeting the local people, the handicrafts people, going to somebody's home, for example, and see how they make halloumi, to taste it, getting the recipe, try to make it for yourself. So really hands-on experiences that are really showing the authentic side of Cyprus. And, on this route, which, as I said, is going to be exclusive to the mountains and rural areas, every village is going to have their own set of experiences. There's going to be accommodation facilities included. There's going to be restaurants included. So the whole point of this is to really showcase the authentic side of Cyprus and all these wonderful people who have chosen to stay in the villages and have their life there and support the local community. It's all about more experiential type of tourism. We feel that this is the trend going forward. And I'm very happy and very proud that we started working on this even before the pandemic. And now we all see during the pandemic that this is what people want, the authentic side of a destination and not just spending time by the beach and in the sea.
Well, that's been going, of course, with the workshops that you've been running now for over a month, I think. Very quickly, how have those been going?
Oh, my God, Rosie. I mean, the excitement and the reaction from people has been amazing. Both the people, the handicrafts people who are giving these workshops, but also the people who have attended. I mean, we've had villages where over the course of the whole day, because it's workshops from the morning until 6, 7 in the afternoon, we have had villages that have had maybe 500, maybe 1,000 visitors, something that has never happened to these villages. And the whole point of this program, in total now we are sponsoring around 600 of these workshops until the end of the year. By sponsored, I mean we cover the cost of labor of the person who is there showing people the handicraft. We're covering the cost of the raw materials, even the transport of the raw materials. If, let's say, we're talking about the handicrafts person who's traveling there from a city, we're covering the cost of a tour guide showing people around the village. So basically, the local community and the handicrafts person, they don't have the cost. We cover all of the cost. It's free for people to visit, and you only need to reserve in advance if you're participating actively in the workshop. So let's say if you're going somewhere to see how traditional chairs are being made and you want to participate with your own hands and see how that feels, in that case you need to call in advance. Otherwise you don't need to. You can go, you can spend your day there, and it's really fantastic. And the whole point of these workshops, obviously, we had in mind the upcoming launch of Heartland of Legends. We wanted to get an idea what sort of workshops could be available for inclusion into that route. But above all, we wanted to do something that is going to help our artisans, our craftspeople. We know that they've also been hit by the pandemic. We know that they have wanted to be part of our tourism products for many, many years now, so we're giving them this opportunity. And we also have given the opportunity through this scheme to villages in the rural and mountain areas to really put something on a show that is going to attract people. So, multi-layered approach, and it's working.
It certainly is, and everybody can find out the details, I think, at visitcyprus.com.
Yes.
Savas Perdios, Deputy Minister of Tourism, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you, Rosie.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
Well, of course, as soon as the summer holidays are over, the cultural scene here in Cyprus is up and running so fast, you wonder where they've been. The pandemic did its share of the damage, but everybody's coming back. And one of those people is my next guest. She's directing a play called Love, Loss and What I Wore. It's happening on the 24th, 25th and 26th of September in Nicosia at the Teatro Dendro. She is Monica Gavrielidis. Monica, thanks for joining us. So, Love, Loss and What I Wore. Who wrote it?
It was Nora Ephraim and with her sister. Nora Ephraim is well known for writing When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail, basically all the Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan movies. And it's a very empowering play because it feels exactly what the title says. It's all about love, loss, and what I wore, in the sense that it's women talking about loves they had in their life, losses either of death or of the loss of someone that they loved in the sense of a partner, and things that they wore, pieces of clothing that were important to them in some way or another, that impacted them in just a very unique way. So it's the type of play that you're going to laugh, you're going to get emotional, something's going to hit home, you're going to relate to things, both men and women, even though it's played only by 7 women.
Which is unusual, isn't it? I mean, I know from the work I've done in the theatre, very often finding any theatre that features enough women, because usually it's all men and very few women's roles. So having an all-female cast is pretty unusual, isn't it?
Absolutely. We created this group, I call them the Founding Mothers. We were 5 people that were part of Athina Xenidou's drama class. And we decided to create a theater group called Women's Empowerment Theater, or for short, WET. We created that, and we wanted to do a play with an all-female cast. And yes, you're absolutely right. We had a very hard time finding something. And this, we just stumbled to it almost by mistake. And when we started sawing the videos, and I immediately wanted, we ordered the script, and then we just fell in love because the script is absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's very poignant. It's still up to date in the sense that even though the people in the play tell the stories of they might be people that lived in the 1970s, 1980s. So people young and old are going to find something that will touch them and move them in this play.
Now, as a woman, I mean, what I wore, I have to say that I think it's fair to say that when you look back over your life, the chances are that on some of the bigger occasions that you recall, you might well remember what you wore. But how difficult was it to find not only the connection with that through all the people who are taking part, but also, of course, the costumes?
There are no costumes. We talk about them. You will see why. There's no costume change. It's a relatively short play. We're not doing the entire play per se because some things that were in the original play we found not relatable, too American for Cyprus in many ways. So we're not doing the play in its entirety. So we nitpicked and went through the entire play, and let's say we got the creme of de la creme. But in the play, at least the way we're doing it and my vision of it, if there are no costume changes, there is no need for them. And you will understand when you see the show. So here we are talking vividly about these clothes, and I'm sure everybody in the audience will be able to visualize them, yet we don't need to wear them.
So it's a little bit of imagination on the part of the audience, and it's interesting that you say that you cut it down, because I was going to ask you how you play these sort of things to an audience in Cyprus. We do have perhaps people in the audience, English is not their first language, and we have the Mediterranean culture, don't we? So I wondered about how you adapted it. I think you've probably answered it, but were there any other changes you made?
Not really. We made very few changes in terms, again, trying not to make it too American, because obviously it's an American author that, basically writes about New York. She's famous for doing New York characters. But this one we were able to adapt, and even characters that are American are being played with different accents, and there's no problem about it. No issues, not problems. There's never a problem, but there's no issue. The audience is not going to not understand anything. And it's very understandable if English is your second language as well. It's very simple words, just with a lot of meaning.
Right, you've got 3 performances, I think, 24th, 25th and 26th of September.
Exactly.
Tell me a bit about Teatro Dentro. I'm not familiar with that one.
Teatro Dentro is in Paluriotisa. It's a relatively, I would say, for Cyprus, medium size. It has 140 seats. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we will only be able to be at half. So there will only be 70 tickets on sale every night. All COVID measures will be taken. You will have to present your Safe Pass. The audience is urged to come about half an hour earlier so that we have time to seat people.
And where can people get tickets?
Calling the number that is advertised. You can find us on Facebook under Women's Empowerment Theatre.
So look on Facebook for Love, Loss and What I Wore, directed by Monica Gavrielidis. Thanks for joining us, Monica.
Thank you so much, Rosie.
And in other news, the Cabinet announced in the middle of the week that it was no longer going to take disciplinary action against a public school head teacher who's also an artist. Yorgos Gabriel had been called to appear before a disciplinary committee with the possibility of losing his job. This is all because in his spare time he's a talented artist, but the subject of his art is controversial to say the least. His work has featured the president, the government, and also the Orthodox Church and the Archbishop. And although it's caused controversy, there was a huge outcry when it seemed that he could lose his job as a head teacher because of what he does in his spare time. This comes after the Education Minister has been in hot water about telling English teachers to tear out a page of an English language book that called Kemal Atatürk a Turkish hero. Freedom of expression has been very much under the microscope, and it seems that with this decision not to take Gabriel to the disciplinary committee, perhaps the government has realised that freedom of expression is indeed something that is valued by the majority of Cypriots. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.